there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics. From very, very high above all the puerile and pedantic forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the brand new, incredible Cowboy State Politics live studio. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the whole brand new Cowboy State Politics live. We, of course, are in my brand new studio, as you can see on the monitor. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of give you the grand tour, the nickel tour, as it is. We've got a number of different cameras that are set up in the studio, a whole bunch of bells and whistles that we didn't really have before. So, Mr. Producer, I'm going to start calling you Lou, by the way. Lou, why don't we go and show Lou?
Why Lou?
Because Lou Grant, he was the grouchy producer off of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
I remember him.
All right, so let's give him a grand tour here. Let's go first to the split screen. Aha! So here you can, the camera's not exactly focused on
Let's
me
do it
anymore.
this way.
Ah, there we go. All right, so on the, of course, I am always to the right of just about everything. But here on the split screen, you can see what's happening on my computer monitor, and you can see, me. And let's go full screen to...
That looks better.
Yeah, that's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go full screen to the other camera view, one of the other ones. Okay, this is the full view of the studio.
It is.
And I should tell you, a lot of work went into crafting this entire thing. We only have 4 different camera views hooked up today, but we do have the capability of doing 5 or 6 cameras. I have no idea why you would need that many, but we have them if we need them. And
we have to have some better looking guests.
Yeah, we actually, speaking of guests, we have later on in the week, we have a great interview with United States Representative Harriet Hageman. It's a great show. And, I was watching it last night, and it's absolutely fantastic. And anyway, so the other thing we can do is, why don't you go ahead and bring up the news? I have no idea what they're talking about, but let's listen in a little bit.
Said when our children are eating, ketchup as a vegetable,
right.
And
so
all these other highly processed foods,
hearing
we have to do something to change that.
The audio that's coming off the TV right now, we have it on Fox News. Who knows what we'll have it on in the future? Just happens to be a convenient, national news program. So what we're going to use that for is if there's something happening, maybe if the president's speaking or there's some, rocket that Elon Musk is sending up or whatever, we'll play that. And then the other thing is, hold on just a second, Mr. Producer.
I'm just playing with this because if I look at the TV, I can see better.
All right. So the other thing we can do, and I only want you to show on my monitor real quick. So throw up my monitor real quick. All right, cool. Enough of that. So what we can do there is, when I'm reading through a piece and there's a significant quotation that I think that you should probably read for yourself, we can throw that up. So, and then the other thing too is we can take live calls on the program. And it's so, if there's something on your mind, and in fact, you know what, since today is the first unveiling of the brand new studio. We'll go ahead and leave the phone lines open. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, or if you want to talk about our brand new studio, go ahead and give me a call. We begin this morning with Senator Cynthia Lummis. And, I really get tired of big announcements that are made intentionally to grab headlines. So take a look at this one. This is Senator Cynthia Lummis, and she says the Bitcoin Act is the solution to our national debt. Is it really? That's really the solution? Maybe a solution would be to stop printing gobs and oodles of cash and stop spending like drunken sailors. So from the piece, and I quote, Senator Cynthia Lummis has described the Bitcoin Act as the solution to addressing the national debt and securing America's future prosperity. Lummis made this statement in a March 11th post on X. Quote, the Bitcoin Act is the solution to our national debt and the future of American prosperity. Okay, it is not the solution to America's debt. The solution is to stop spending. And more importantly, to stop printing more money than that ever existed on the face of the planet to continue your stupid spending. And continuing with the article, according to Lummis, who represents Wyoming, she reintroduced the Boosting Innovation, Technology, and Competitiveness through optimized. Is anybody else getting tired of these dumb acronyms? It's like we have to come up with an acronym for every bill. We just can't say it's the Let's Not Rack Up Giant Amounts of Debt Act. But anyway, I digress. The act is co-sponsored by Jim Justice, Tommy Tuberville, Roger Marshall, Marsha Blackburn, Bernie Moreno, and in parallel, Nick Begich, I guess is his name, from Alaska, introduced similar legislation in the House. Now, the Bitcoin Act seeks to create a strategic Bitcoin. Now, wait a minute. A strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, apparently, this act is going to create them, but seems to me that we had one of those before. From a piece that was published in the Bitcoinist. I know when you're talking about Bitcoin, there's and a lot of these different tech blogs, they all have strange names, so don't freak out if it's not one you've heard about. But here's the headline on this one. Biden administration may have sold United States Bitcoin reserves. Now, hold on a minute. I thought that the Bitcoin Act was going to establish a Bitcoin reserve. Let's see what this one said. And this was back in March 19th. At the Digital Asset Summit on March 19th, Senator Cynthia Lummis claimed that the previous Biden administration may have sold a significant portion of the United States' confiscated Bitcoin holdings. During a panel discussion, Senator Lummis outlined her concerns, explaining that while the U.S. government may have amassed a large sum of Bitcoin through asset forfeitures, some of these funds may have been liquidated. And let's see here. So, quote, we're trying to find out how much Bitcoin and whether they are fully surrendered to U.S. custody. We think that could be the basis for the first year's installment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Okay, so which one is it? Did we have a reserve that the Biden administration sold off, or are we creating a reserve? I guess my whole point on this one is maybe we should just be honest about what our government is doing. Bitcoin is not going to be the solution to the national debt. We are over $36 trillion in debt. And just creating another reserve isn't going to solve that. And again, I think that the Biden administration probably sold off that reserve. I have no proof of that whatsoever, but it seems to me that they would have. They sold off the petroleum reserve. So, why not sell off all the Bitcoin? So right now, and I just pulled up the usdebtclock.org, which, by the way, is a real-time view of our national debt. There you go. We are $36,698,866,000,000 in debt. I don't think the Bitcoin reserve is going to solve that. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. And we'll see what Senator Lummis comes up with next. Moving on now across the great state of Wyoming, there were protests. Pretty much in every community, as far as I saw. My piece from the Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, more than 300 participate in a hands-off protest at the Wyoming state capitol. And I quote, Cheyenne resident, let's see here. Okay, so this is from the Turkey Vulture. They're definitely going to be sympathetic with all of these protesters, but let's just read through here. Let's see here. Clark and hundreds with her stood in front of the Capitol, made up one of hundreds of anti-Trump protesters that took place across the country on Saturday. The demonstrations have been dubbed the hands-off protests, and on their official website, they are described as a nationwide mobilization to stop the brazen power grab, the most brazen power grab in modern history. The website declares that President Donald Trump and billionaire Elon Musk want to strip America for parts, and that's a direct quote. This sentiment was prominently on display in downtown Cheyenne. Protesters carried a spread of signs, including Orange Lives Matter, Deport Musk, Fire Trump, and No Human is Illegal on Stolen Land. Protest organizer Joe Ramirez. Okay, I've had enough of this crap. These protests are... It's window dressing, really is what it is. The left refers to it as AstroTurf. I didn't personally drive by the protest that was here in Sheridan, but there were a lot of people, and I had a number of the Cowboy State Politics spies, drive downtown and take a couple videos. I should have had them.
I'm not a spy, but I drove by.
You are most definitely a spy, Lou.
Somebody said, well, how many were there? And I said, oh, maybe 70 to 100. Well, the news report said 300. Well, I didn't count the looky-loos.
No.
There are a lot of people who just walked down there to see what was going on, actual protesters. And how many of those were actually from Sheridan remains to be seen. We drove around and looked at the parking lots.
Well, that's where I was going next, actually. I did have a number of people drive down to downtown Sheridan and just take as many pictures as they could. And, this is all anecdotal. So, you can't really say, hey, the majority of them were bussed in from out of town. But there were a number of people downtown that none of my people had ever met. And I just watching the video, I had several different people send me videos of the protest downtown. And I didn't see anybody I recognized, except for the people that were waving American flags and, that were, standing on the other side of the street watching this craziness. So anyway, complete window dressing, AstroTurf, as the left calls a lot of, conservative protests or conservative events. But really, when you refuse to admit that our country is deeply and perilously in debt, we have a serious problem. When the American people, and specifically the left, and I guess this is kind of stereotypic of the left in America, that they can't really be authentic with themselves. They can't be honest with the people that are that they're talking to, and it is just an attempt to continue the federal spending. What DOGE is doing is identifying the waste, fraud, and abuse in our government. And if you just look at the ridiculous list of things that we're spending money on, DEI programs in deep African countries, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I don't know. I think that, everybody has a right to protest, even if you're wrong. And I think that you absolutely should. The problem here, though, is we're not being honest with each other. We're just lying, like we always are. AstroTurf on the left-hand side. On the left. We'll be back in a minute. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website CowboyStatePolitics.com under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. Documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. You know, that's a record that the mainstream media I wish that they would attempt to be right more often, but at this point, they have been lying to you for so long that there's no way that they're going to catch up, and kind of makes me happy. A good example of that, there was an article printed in the Sheridan Press, and it's not, I know you probably think that I'm picking on them, but they've made themselves a convenient target for me recently. But there was a recent article that there's a guy in town, I forget his name, I don't even really think that it's all that important, but the article printed in the paper said that he was convicted of possession of an unregistered firearm. And they just left it at that. Well, you and I know that there isn't a law that demands that you register your firearms. In fact, that would be a major story if they were. I mean, we already know that the Biden administration clandestinely set up a registration program. I mean, I think that's almost a well-known fact. At least it is in the gun community. But for the Sheridan Press, and this is pretty typical of the media across Wyoming, they have access to this thing called Pacer. Pacer lets them look at all the court records from federal cases on down. And had they done a little bit of due diligence into that guy, they would have realized that it wasn't that he was convicted of possession of an unregistered firearm. He was convicted of having an unregistered firearm that appears on the NFA list. In reality, he didn't pay for a tax stamp for his short-barreled rifle. But the other points that they left out, and maybe this is just a case of playing favorites in their hometown, but this guy is not a good guy. He is suspected in the rape of 3 women on the Wind River Reservation. There's a whole bunch of charges that have been filed, that have been alleged, and it's there's a lot to the story. So what I'm saying is, when you read a story in the mainstream media, just make sure that you're skeptical, that you're reading it critically, and that if there's something that doesn't seem right, go do your own research. Find out what's true for yourself. That's what I do. I see something that pops up in my head or in front of me, and I just Google it and see what if it's true or not. And more often than not, when it's in the mainstream media, well, it's usually bull crap. From the London Financial Times, Keir Starmer, who is the new Prime Minister of Great Britain, he is going to admit, and I find this a shocking admission. He is going to admit that globalization has failed as the tariff war drags on. And I quote, the Prime Minister will declare an end to globalization and admit that it has failed millions of voters as the fallout from President Trump's tariffs reverberates around the world. In his first significant intervention since the U.S. imposed sweeping changes on imports, Sir Keir Starmer will say tomorrow that the seismic global economic effects prove the government must move further and faster to boost growth and supply side reforms. Well, there's the problem right there. And this is one of the reasons why why globalization has failed, simply because government doesn't need to be involved in the private market. That is not one of the roles of government. The free market should be left to operate independently of government. Now, what government can do is create the conditions by which business can grow and prosper. And that's the only thing that government should do. Create a tax environment. I mean, we all have to have taxes. As much as I hate to admit it, I like driving on nice, smooth roads, and I think that probably having a police force is a good thing, and it's kind of nice to have a fire department.
Just want to throw in there a little bit. That's one of the hardest things about legislating, is remembering what the role of government is.
Yeah.
Because people come up with these ideas. There was one brought up here just the last few days about the state of Wyoming could basically start a business, the state starting a business to store nuclear waste. A lot of money in that. Number one, there are going to be some people that have issues with that. Not in my backyard.
Right.
Number two, that's not the role of government.
Exactly.
And these are conservatives that are coming up with these ideas. So we kind of got to check each other all the time.
Exactly. And it's not the proper role of government to get involved in private business. And, too often you get even conservatives, and conservatives fall into this trap all the time. And it starts out with, we want this big business to move into town, and we don't really like burdensome taxes. And so we'll give them a tax break, and that'll convince them to come into town. Well, the problem is you create an environment where one business is unfairly, is given benefits that the other business isn't, and you end up picking winners and losers. So back to the piece from the Financial Times. Quote, a Downing Street official said that Trump has done something that we don't agree with, but there's a reason why people are behind him on this. The world has changed. Globalization is over, and we are now in a new era. We've got to demonstrate that our approach, a more active labor government and a more reformist government, can provide the answers for people in every part of this country. See, the English, they're still operating under the premise that government has to be involved in everything. And frankly, they just don't. And, more bull crap coming from overseas. There's a reason we got rid of England, and we decided to get rid of them. So, as we get closer to the second break here, you may notice that there's a bit of a lag, bit of latency going on. And we figured out how we can fix that. So for today's episode, it's just going to be a little bit off, but probably on tomorrow's show, we'll have that thing all figured out for you.
You'll also notice, because this is the first time I've done this. Believe
Weird.
it or not. Yeah.
Leave it to me to hire a producer that's never done this before.
Hire. Confiscate. What I won't do for a vote. I will gradually begin to learn this, so it's second nature, but you get to thinking about one thing and you realize, oh, I'm showing people the picture of the back of my head when I'd be showing them the front of your head. Now, several people have called in and said, hey, thanks. But
well, anyway, it's a new studio, new toys and bells and whistles. So, it's just going to take some getting used to. But anyway, by the way, I just pulled up the call-in screen, and if you want to be part of the show, the number's 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. Now, here's an interesting piece from The Blaze. And I know that everybody has seen stories everywhere of Teslas getting vandalized and burned and torched, and people going after Tesla dealerships. The funny part is that there's no other vehicle that has as many cameras on it than a Tesla. If you're going to vandalize one of those, you are definitely going to get caught. And
I think Tesla was behind this studio at some point. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? There's enough cameras in here. From The Blaze, and this one is just bizarre. Quote, the article is, why a Minnesota police chief says a female Tesla vandalism suspect won't be charged because even she has been a victim. And I quote, in a twist amid the recent and widespread rash of attacks against Tesla vehicles, a Minnesota police chief is following his department's, quote, core value of being compassionate and won't be charging a Tesla vandalism suspect. Lou, go ahead and play cut 1 for us.
Cooperative. The victim in this case just wanted their car fixed, and they just wanted the suspect to pay for that. Based on the totality of the circumstances here, and along with our core value of being compassionate, this is the best outcome for everybody involved in this case. But let me be clear here. In Bloomington, you probably have never heard me utter these words. The suspect in this case may have been a victim. And I mean victim in terms of the rhetoric that is being spewed out here.
All right. I can't handle it anymore. So the person that vandalized a Tesla, that damaged somebody else's personal property, is a victim because of the rhetoric that's being floated around.
Yeah, a victim of the rhetoric. What have we become?
Exactly right. Where personal responsibility doesn't figure into anything really. And I mean, there's always somebody else that's at fault. It's never us. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And if you listen to what this is the police chief saying, well, really she's a victim because of all the rhetoric. And I didn't put the rest of the soundbite on there because he just goes on and on and on explaining how this person shouldn't be charged. And, it's not really their fault. And, we should just all get together because this is the best situation for everybody. No, the best situation for everybody is to charge criminals. I mean, I am sick to death of people committing crimes and not getting charged. And it's, you hear this phrase down in Cheyenne, like the tone from the top. Well, the tone from the top was for the last, 4 years. Well, we don't prosecute protesters. It was a mostly peaceful protest, even though they're burning down police stations. There were not that many people that got prosecuted during the riots of a couple of summers ago, where they burned police stations down, public buildings, where numerous people got hurt. But did you see any of those people hauled into court? See any of them prosecuted? No. And it goes all the way down to the local level. I can't tell you how many times I open up a copy of the Sheridan Compress or the Sheridan D-Press or whatever we want to call that, and look at the news from the court, and it says, person A, distribution of methamphetamine, probation. Second offense, distribution of methamphetamine, probation. Actually, there was a case in Buffalo. I know this person. I went to high school with her. 3 times she's been convicted of possession with intent to distribute, and in 2 of those cases, she had the drugs on her. And the only punishment that she was been given is 30 days in jail and some probation for 3 distribution felonies. Felonies. Count them. 1, 2, 3. Until we get back to a place where we are forcing people to be personally responsible for the things that they do. I mean, we're not going to right this country. There's no way. With rights come responsibilities. And if you want to have the freedom to run your life the way that you see fit, the other side of it is we have to prosecute criminals who violate the rights of others. You have the right to do whatever you want so long as it doesn't infringe on everybody else's rights. That's called the harms principle. And if you read our Constitution, it's very clear that you have personal liberties. They're not unlimited, though. You don't have the right to violate somebody else's constitutional rights or their property. And when you do, there's punishments. That's how we create an ordered society. But what judges and this police chief and prosecutors, I'll give you another example in just a second. When they just disregard the crimes that have been committed against an individual or against a group of individuals, there's nothing to stop you from violating the law. Another good one, Cyrus Western and Bill Novotny. They very clearly violated election law, so much so that they attempted to cover it up. It was investigated by the Sheridan County Sheriff's Department, and Boot Hill, that's the name of the deputy that investigated. I mean, the police report, the investigation report is pretty interesting reading, but you go through that and it is absolutely clear that at the time, Representative Cyrus Western, who is now the head of the EPA in Region 8, and Johnson County Commissioner Bill Novotny absolutely violated the law. Well, the county prosecutor wouldn't press any charges, and so it was forwarded to our feckless Attorney General Bridget Hill, and it has sat on her desk for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. But the thing is that we have to prosecute crimes. I mean,
Bridget Hill must have a big desk because I know there's a lot of stuff stacked on it.
Oh, man.
16 or 17 election allegations. But beyond that, I had an interesting opportunity to testify to a number of the judiciary at one point, and they were wanting us to pass some laws. And my response was, why don't you start by prosecuting the laws we already have on the books?
Enforce the laws we have.
What good does it do to bring up more laws if you're not going to take care of the first one?
It's exactly right. I mean, it just absolutely infuriates me. I mean, we don't prosecute criminals, and we wonder why they continue to be criminals. And yet conservatives all the time are complaining about illegal immigrants not getting prosecuted. We got to get back to being a nation of laws, not a nation of men. We'll continue in just a second.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. I thought the world was coming to an end. Trump was destroying the economy. Everything was going to explode. I'm looking at the Dow right now. It's up 3.6% at 39,000. Now, admittedly, we got a ways to go. But this whole, and here's what fascinated me about this whole tariff situation, is that the United States, or the goods coming from the United States, almost the world over, have varying degrees of tariffs on them. And I talked about this last week on the program, but here's the reason why. Because generally speaking, the United States makes some pretty good stuff. It's pretty high quality compared to the rest of the world. And so when our products are introduced into a place that maybe doesn't have as great a manufacturing sector, well, they artificially bump up the price of our products to prevent their citizens from buying our stuff, and in effect, kind of force them to buy the lower quality product. In some places, there are 60% tariffs on the United States. We haven't had a fair trade situation, a fair trade system, a free and open marketplace for a really, really long time. In fact, what we do have is an unfair marketplace. So all of Trump's tariffs, that's an attempt to level the playing field. Hey, if you're going to slap a 50% tariff on us, well, I mean, we're going to do the same thing to your goods. It's a negotiating tactic. And, and all of this, the stock market going bonkers last week, dropping, well, nothing had happened. That was a response to expected events. But there was nothing really driving that. All it was just fear. Investors getting scared that the entire global economy was going to implode, when the truth of the matter is that most of the countries that have tariffs on us, and I mean that you can, the list is long and distinguished, but most of them are going to come to the table and say, let's negotiate. We don't really like this whole tariff business. We like selling our stuff in the United States. So it's all going to equal out. And I'm not one of these people that looks at the Dow Jones Industrial Average and thinks that that's exactly what's happening with the economy. That's a snapshot of how investors are feeling at any given moment. And right now, today, it's up 3.6%. So the sky is not falling, and your world is not going to implode. Unless, of course, your name is James Carville. James Carville, the one-time political genius. He was the guy that was responsible for getting Bill Clinton elected. You've heard the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." That was James Carville. Well, he has pretty much gone off the rails. He's gone from being a pretty well-respected political advisor, a political theorist. I mean, he might even go that far, to really being kind of a wacko. This is from the Daily Wire. And I quote, longtime Democrat strategist James Carville invoked the Nazis and suggested that anyone who collaborated with President Trump might eventually suffer the same fate as those who'd cooperated with the brutal German dictator Adolf Hitler. Carville made these comments on his Politicon podcast, where he referred to major corporations and law firms that were aiding the Trump administration as traitors and suggested they'd be ripe for retribution if the people were so inclined. Now, I thought it was Republicans who were engaged in all of this crazy doomsday rhetoric. I thought it was conservatives that all the time were the extremists. Excuse me. The way Trotsky Wolfson puts it is we're the right-wing extremists. Well, it seems to me that the more desperate and the more, I guess desperate is the way to put it, the more desperate that Democrats become, the crazier the rhetoric gets. And when I don't know. I mean, I've always kind of shied away from the Hitler reference simply because, I mean, it's meant to instill fear, right? It's the same thing as calling somebody a racist. You call somebody a racist, and there's just such a nasty connotation with that term that really the person you accused is left to defend themselves and say, no, I'm not a racist. Well, the same thing is true with Hitler, but the left has used it so often that it's really lost any of its power. Now, let's go ahead and listen to at least a part of what Carville has to say. It's play cut 2.
For access. Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know how this ends? Do you know these collaborators with the country is going to feel toward collaborators with this regime?
All right. So the funny part about this, if you've ever watched his podcast, he doesn't even have a backdrop. In this particular version, he's in a hotel room, and you can see behind him his ruffled bed and all of the pillows. And I mean, it's really kind of incredible.
He just wants you to think he has a life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's ridiculous. Go ahead and continue with it.
Maybe you need to go in history and see what happened in August of 1944, after Paris was liberated. They didn't take very kindly to the collaborators. No. It was not a very pretty sight in the streets of Paris. I'm not saying that these people should be placed in pajamas and have their heads shaved, march down Pennsylvania Avenue and spit out. I'm not saying that.
No.
But
I'm not suggesting that at all.
That did happen.
All right, that's enough of that. I'm not saying that these people should be perp walked down Pennsylvania Avenue. No, that's not me. But, maybe if somebody, no. It just absolutely ridiculous. And the rhetoric has got to such a fever pitch that, it is becoming untethered from reality. And that's where the Democrats are right now. I on the podcast, I guess maybe it's 2 weeks ago now, I interviewed this guy named Gabriel Green. He's a Democrat. He claims to be a Democrat in name only. But anyway, I straight asked him, so what's the Democrats' plan? And he says, well, they don't have one. Aha. Now, if you were to ask James Carville, hey, what plan do the Democrats have? He would probably look at you with sort of listless eyes and say, well, we're gonna resist Trump. That's their whole plan. And when that is the only thing that you have left in your bag, well, you're just going to have to resort to overheated rhetoric, compare the Republicans to Hitler, and say that anybody that is in favor of the Trump administration should be perp walked down Pennsylvania Avenue. Now, here's the other thing that I think is kind of dangerous with this. I was trained in speech and debate and rhetoric, and I can tell you that when you overuse a phrase like such as "you're a racist" or "you're a Nazi" or those words, those phrases, they tend to lose their power. And it allows people to, and I'm just using people in general, but it allows you to use those phrases in general everyday parlance. And then it becomes progressively worse. And so then, our discussions, and anytime you have a political discussion, one of them that really irritates me is the overbroad generalizations. Well, the government spends too much. Okay, well, that's true. Where do they spend too much? Why is that a problem? What does that impact? Show me where they're spending too much. You say that the Democrats or the Republicans are extremists and that they're akin to Nazis. Okay, give me some examples. Please explain what you mean. Don't just throw a phrase out there that's meant to elicit a response. It's just James Carville was a pretty well respected Democrat strategist. At one time, he was the guy you went to if you wanted to win an election, but now he's the guy you go to if you want to hear crazy stuff. So when we come back, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and go to Kamala Harris. Yeah. It seems that she was absolutely dumbfounded when she lost the election. Something about giving $9 million to no-name political or TikTok influencers didn't win her the election. It's a bizarre story, and we'll get to it in just a second. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really, you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia, Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand. Well, as you can see, my friends, a brand new studio, a brand new look, a brand new feel. Well, welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live. Wyoming's conservative voice, 335,000 downloads strong. And by the way, it was Cowboy State Politics that started really conservative podcasting in the state. At one time, there was only Cowboy State Politics. And, you know, the credit that I can take, I mean, I think I could probably take a lot of it, but I'm really proud about the amount of information we're getting out. Now, if you're watching, well, if you're listening to this, you're obviously watching, but behind me on the chalkboard, it says Representative Harriet Hageman, the town halls, the tariffs, and Trump. And we did an amazing interview with the good representative, which we'll play on the live program on Thursday. So you definitely don't want to miss it. The real story, why she canceled her in-person town halls, and it is not what the media is telling you. I asked her several pointed questions. In fact, the one that is on everybody's mind, is she going to come back and run for governor? You know, every time I've asked her that question, she's kind of laughed a little bit. And I won't tell you what her answer was. But anyway, so that's coming up on Thursday. Also, we're going to have another interview. I'm thinking maybe I'll probably save it for next week. But Rebecca Bextel is going to join the program. She is running. First of all, she's one of the sponsors of Cowboy State Politics. Just you know, all disclosures out in the open. But she's running for the Wyoming Republican Party chairman, and so she's going to join the program. And we'll probably play that interview. I'm thinking on probably on Tuesday, maybe. We'll see how it goes. But I wanted to take a little trip down memory lane. And as you all know, if you're a longtime listener of the program, I have a fondness for montages. And one of my favorites was the Joe Biden gaff reel. Now, the Joe Biden gaff reel is way too big let's be honest, the guy, every time he opened his mouth, it was something funny that came out of it. But that thing was like 6 minutes long. I also have one that is the Kamala Harris montage, and it is painful. And let's just go ahead and listen to a little bit of it.
So during Women's History Month, we celebrate and we honor
Where's the
the
duct
women
tape? You're
who
gonna
made
need it.
history throughout history, who saw what could be unburdened
I'm gonna get a
by
puke
what had
bucket.
been. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more.
All
that gas
right.
costs more.
Now, the only thing that I have to say is
What can be unburdened by what has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
I am feeling unburdened by what has been, my friends. But Kamala Harris herself is a little bit flabbergasted why she lost the 2024 election. There's about 100 million reasons why she lost. Or in fact, actually, there's 1.9 billion reasons. From the Blaze revealed pro-Kamala social media millions that couldn't sync Brat with Democrat. Now, this is a fascinating expose into the campaign spending of Kamala Harris. And I quote, let me just read you a little bit of it here. The abrupt withdrawal last year, President Joe Biden as the Democrat presidential nominee, followed rapidly by his replacement with Vice President Kamala Harris, and it irked many voters that were left out by the process. Yet, social media seemed to ooze, and that is the correct word, ooze, with enthusiasm and Gen Z friendly hipster appeal. Influencers flooded the web with neon matcha green, and I had to look up what matcha is. It's a kind of tea that comes out like a neon green color. Anyway, matcha green pro Harris videos synced to beats from singer Charlie XCX. I don't even know who that is. His album was called Brat, that was released last year. I don't know. The Poppy Rave videos gushed journalist showed that Harris embodied and confidently independent brat vibe conveyed by the music. Wait, I don't know if you watched any of the social media influencers try to, campaign for Kamala Harris, but it really was pretty sickening. The attempted reach and spending of the pro-Kamala Harris 2024 efforts is unprecedented. Real Clear Investigations obtained internal documents and WhatsApp messages from Democratic strategists behind the influencer campaign. And the main organization that was used was this outfit called Way to Win. One of the major donor groups behind the effort spent more than $9.1 million on social media influencers and during the 2024 campaign. Payments revealed were for the first time, they were revealed in this report from The Blaze. The amount was touted in a document circulated after the election. Now, there's one part of this piece that I want you to read for yourself. Ken, go ahead and throw it up on the screen. Quote, "There's little evidence that such measures moved any significant numbers of voters during an election in which Democrats lost historic levels of support from key constituency groups. The youth vote, Latinos, Black men swung significantly to Donald Trump last year, upending decades of voting patterns." So it didn't really matter how much the Harris campaign spent on their social media influencers. It didn't have any effect. And this whole group, Way to Win, they constantly or repeatedly touted their spending as a victory. Way to Win, in an internal message, touted its work with a stable of the Democrat Party affiliated influencers and activists, including Harry Sisson, and I don't know who any of these people are. Maybe some of the younger members of the audience do. Harry Sisson, Emily Amik, Kat Abdu, Dash, whatever. And it goes on and on. Probably the one that I remember was the Who's Your Daddy or Call Her Daddy podcast. And the amazing thing here, let me see if I can find it in the piece here. The Harris campaign spent $1 million on the set of that podcast, and all of it was made out of cardboard, which kind of symbolizes the entire Kamala Harris campaign. And it's the thing is, everything about that campaign was superficial. And I know that you know people like this. You've seen them on social media, and they're attempting to be influencers, but everything about them is superficial. And the $1 million spent on a set for a podcast that most people don't even listen to that defines the Kamala Harris campaign as a whole. And it wasn't just that; it was the incessant word salad. Play cut 5.
I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community.
Wow, right? But it was that one of those over and again, and it was all sorts of different stuff. Kamala Harris couldn't say a darn thing without it coming out as word salad. I mean, just absolutely incredible. And nothing typifies that campaign more than the tremendous amount of money. The total was like 1.9, it was over $1 billion that the Democrats spent in that campaign. And most of it went to social media influencers. And the reason being is that Kamala Harris refused to go on the Joe Rogan podcast. And the reason she did is it was a 3-hour show. And her strategist knew that if she went on with Joe Rogan, she was not going to be able to get out of looking as idiotic as she is. That eventually, somewhere in those 3 hours, that the real Kamala Harris was going to come out. And that's exactly what happened. And the truth is that podcasters and independent media had an outsized influence on the 2024 presidential campaign. I don't think that anybody can deny that. And it's, I think that it's we saw that phenomenon in Wyoming, and in successive elections. This program interviewed, oh man, in the 2022 election, I interviewed 26 different candidates. In the 24 election, it was a bit fewer, but still, I mean, I really think that the younger voters, definitely Generation Z, are not. I mean, they don't trust the mainstream media, and they shouldn't. And so, when you're a Kamala Harris person, and I mean, you rely on absolutely superficial campaigning. Well, that's I mean, there's a pretty good indication that you're not going to be very successful. Let's see here. We got about 5 minutes left in the program, and I think where I want to end, and I'll pick this up tomorrow on the program, but there's a piece out by CNBC. Let me dig through the stack of stuff here. Let's see here. Yeah, here it is. The article's entitled, AI could affect 40% of jobs and widen the inequality between nations, the United Nations warns. And if you look up on the screen, let me just read this for you. However, the agency also raised concerns about automation and job displacement, warning that AI could affect 40% of jobs worldwide. On top of that, AI is not inherently inclusive, meaning that the economic gains from the tech remain highly concentrated. In other words, we are moving to a point where AI is going to be influencing just about everything. And on my way to the studio this morning, there was yet another news report that use AI for all of your business. And that the ad actually said, you don't even really need to know how to do this. AI can figure that out for you. Well, if that isn't the definition of where we are right now, that, we're going to rely on AI and we don't really have to know anything.
I heard something scary the other day.
What'd you hear?
And this was during the session. Another legislator said, man, so I can't wait until we can write laws with AI.
Whoa!
And that just put chills down my spine. Have you never seen 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Incredible. I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that. We need to get that soundbite, by the way. But it's I'm going to pick this up tomorrow. And if you're a longtime listener of Cowboy State Politics, you know that I'm keenly aware of what's happening in our in the technology field. I'm really concerned about central bank digital currency and the speed at which AI is advancing. It's like anything. It's a very helpful tool, but it is also a tool that if it is misused, it could be very dangerous. And think about firearms. Firearms are a tool, but if they are misused, the results can be devastating. So tomorrow on the show, I'll pick this up and we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail. I covered a piece last week entitled "Sleepwalking into a Cashless Society." A terrifying look at what happens when you don't have cash in your pocket. But I think that it goes hand in hand with the more, I don't even know how I want to put it, the more digitally involved your life is. We have to be cognizant of keeping the human factor in, writing legislation. That's a terrifying prospect, that you're allowing a computer program to write laws. Well, anyway, my friends, we've burned through another busy broadcast hour on the program in the brand new Cowboy State Politics Live studio. And so just to give you kind of a roadmap of where we're headed, tomorrow on the program, it'll just be kind of business as usual. And then on Thursday, we're going to play the Harriet Hageman interview. It's fantastic. I am so excited to show it to you. The first time we have a video interview on Cowboy State Politics, and it is absolutely incredible. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have Open Line Friday, as we always do. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, at the brand new Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is most definitely the one and only Cowboy State Politics. Have a good afternoon, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow.